Hi friends, today we're going to be comparing two budget cameras, the Sony ZV-1 and the GoPro Hero 7 Black. Now, I originally bought my GoPro 5 months ago to start making videos, practice my editing, and to learn the ins and outs of how cameras work. Since then, Sony has come out with an amazing piece of kit that caught my eye because it checks so many boxes for what I'm looking for in an entry-level camera. But is the ZV-1 worth upgrading to? Let's dive in. Let's start with some of the pros about the Sony. On the hardware side, it is packed with so many features like the built-in 3-stop ND filter, a robust windscreen to greatly reduce wind noise when recording outdoors, an 1/8-inch mic input for external audio, Sony's multi-interface shoe for adding external lights and mics without cables, a flip-out screen that turns the camera on automatically when you open it up, and a tally light to let you know when you're actually recording. Hello? No more wondering, is this thing on? The software side is no slouch either. Sony allows you to choose how to run the camera. Auto magic mode for folks who don't want to fiddle with settings.
We've tried nothing and we're all out of ideas.
Full manual mode for recovering control freaks everywhere, and anywhere in between. Some of the fluffy consumer features include product showcase mode, perfect for unboxings and tutorials, soft skin effect that lets us hide how much we've all aged this past year, and snappy autofocusing. It also includes an easy bokeh button if you're not experienced setting your aperture, shutter speed, and ISO, but need to pretend like you do. Fake it till you make it, baby. For the hardcore cinematography nerds out there, the ZV-1 features 10 picture profiles, including HLG, Cine, and S-Log, which allows users much more flexible coloring options in post. Of course, dialing in all these settings across 29 pages of menus is not a quick and easy task.
6 hours later.
Thankfully, Sony has included custom button layouts, function keys, recallable memory slots, and customizable quick menus to help speed up this process. Thank you, Sony! Let's switch it up and talk about the Hero 7 Black. This little thing is extremely portable and rugged. You can always find a use for a GoPro on a shoot because they can go anywhere. Stabilization is, of course, a big selling feature with action cameras and has only improved with every generation. The Hero 8 Black has even better stabilization than the Hero 7 Black with its Hypersmooth 2.0, but for me, there just weren't enough other improvements to justify buying the more expensive Hero 8. One of my favorite features about the GoPro lineup is their smartphone app. It's truly fantastic. You can watch your footage remotely, you can preview your camera output without having to look behind the tiny screen, and you can adjust all your camera settings, not just the main ones. Which leads us perfectly into the cons of the Sony ZV-1. The camera app isn't awful, but it lacks so many features that it's borderline useless. You can preview your shot, but isn't that what the flip-out screen is for? You can change between shooting modes, but only the pre-programmed ones, none of your custom memory slots. And what happens when you connect your camera and phone together using one of your own memory slot settings? Right now we're on memory slot 1. See, we're in 4K 24 frames per second. As soon as I hit connect on my phone, the camera wipes it out and changes it to a pre-baked setting. There you go. And it swaps it over. All on its own and with no warning. That is brutal.
Whatever, I do what I want.
The app does give you control over zoom, focus, white balance, shutter speed, aperture, and ISO, but those can all be assigned to different buttons and function keys on the camera itself. The biggest reason that I never use the Sony app is that you can't use two control devices at the same time. For example, I can't connect the Sony to my gimbal if the camera is already hooked up to my smartphone. Meanwhile, the cheaper GoPro has no problem talking to both devices at the same time. Maybe Sony needs to go back to kindergarten to learn how to share.
No, Mom's boy.
Okay, you need to share. Sharing is caring.
But I don't care.
Unfortunately, this isn't the only flaw with the ZV-1. It's not even the most egregious. Here are my top 5 gripes in order of most heinous.
I'm not mad. I'm just disappointed.
Number 1, the location of the battery and memory card slot. It's on the bottom, right next to the quarter 20 mount. If you ever have to change batteries or cards,
Trust me, it'll happen.
you get to enjoy removing all mounting plates from your tripod or gimbal in order to do so. The only way around this is to buy an L bracket that gives you access to the bottom of the camera. Now, this isn't the end of the world, but it adds weight and cost to your rig. If you don't need more attachment points to add more gear to your ZV-1, it's hard to justify this purchase. Number 2, micro B instead of USB-C. Why, Sony? Why? This means longer charging times, slower transfer speeds, and having to worry about getting the cable orientation wrong and destroying the connection pins. Come on, Sony, it's 2020. USB-C, all the things, am I right? Number 3, the Sony's battery performance is pretty poor. at least you can use an external source to power the camera via the micro B port, but it still requires you to have a battery pack installed in the camera, and it won't charge the battery pack if the camera is on. Number 4. Sony has also promised that you'll be able to use the ZV-1 as a webcam without any additional hardware. That feature was supposed to be available July 2020. I actually had to push this video release back because Sony finally released the webcam drivers a couple days ago. Of course, it's available for PC only. Better luck next time, Apple.
I promise I'll get you next time.
So how well does it work? In a word, it's garbage. First off, you need to turn Control with Smartphone off because of Sony's sharing issues. Then, you need to turn on PC remote function. You'll also need to install the driver available from Sony's site. Just Google Sony Imaging Edge webcam for the link. Once you've gone through those steps, you should have a new video option called Sony Camera that streams your camera's output. After all that messing around, it's finally done. And it looks good, right? Right?
Wrong.
That is absolutely
Wrong.
proved over and over again.
For some unknown reason, Sony decided that resolution doesn't matter anymore. You can see here on OBS that the default resolution of the Imaging Edge software is around a quarter of the 1080p capture screen. When we swap over to the Elgato Cam Link, it comes up full size and looks great. Even your grandma with cataracts can tell Sony software looks atrocious compared to the Cam Link.
I put that on everything.
And what about audio, you might ask? Oh, that's right, you don't get that at all with Sony. If you were planning on using the ZV-1 on a desktop setup and you don't have an external mic,
That's it, man. Game over, man. It's game over.
Number 5. Most YouTubers and reviewers have complained about the 24 to 70mm lens being too tight for vlogging, and that's a totally reasonable criticism. If you use active stabilization, that means a 1.2x crop on your footage, increasing your focal length to 28mm. If you record in 4K instead of 1080, that crops out even more footage. Fortunately for all of us, I never plan on doing any vlogging content whatsoever.
Phew. That could have been ugly.
That said, if you use a gimbal instead of in-camera stabilization and record at 1080p instead of 4K, you can get a pretty wide image without too much hassle. Heck, you could even go full compensator by adding a selfie stick to the rig, guaranteed that none of your crushes will ever talk to you at the mall.
Are you in a relationship?
No, I'm not.
Cool, do you like what you see?
Of course, the GoPro isn't without its own faults too. The biggest issue I've had with it is that it loves to turn on by itself, unprovoked, even with voice control disabled. Better still, sometimes it decides to obey the shutoff timer, other times it just stays on until the battery dies. It's super frustrating. It's gotten to the point where I just expect the camera to be dead whenever I pick it up to use it. Now I could open up the mount and take the camera out, remove the battery after every shoot, but that shouldn't be necessary. This has been a feature of GoPros for a long time, and it still continues to plague Hero 8s as well. Hopefully GoPro can sort this out before releasing their next generation of cameras. I've also had issues when swiping up or down on my touchscreen to get to my preferences or view my footage. It's a small thing, but very frustrating. Of course, not having recallable memory slots slows you down too.
I'm just playing this whole game in the settings.
He's playing Tetris in UI Simulator.
Fortunately, the phone app is much faster and easier to navigate than the camera's onboard settings menus. But enough of my whining. Let's actually see some head-to-head footage, shall we? First up is stabilization. Our torture test is walking up and down stairs, a very difficult thing to smooth out. With stabilization turned off, both cameras delivered amazing results. Assuming, of course, that you're looking to film the next Cloverfield and want your audience to hurl their guts out.
Are you okay?
I'm fine. I just threw up in my mouth a little bit.
Adding Hypersmooth makes the GoPro footage very usable, but the stabilization on the Sony leaves a lot to be desired. Active is by far the smoothest, but the crop is pretty extreme. Adding a gimbal closes the gap between stabilized and non-stabilized footage substantially. To my eyes, the active and Hypersmooth clips look a touch smoother than the others, but you'd be hard-pressed to notice a difference when they're not played side by side. Now, I don't claim to be an expert on image quality, but there are some pretty drastic differences between these two cameras. Almost all the footage on the GoPro seemed to lack in the mid-range. When coloring the GoPro video, I had to push the mid-tone detail a lot to get the footage to look anything like the Sony's. Now, this shot is so cool. I love the lens flares and gorgeous scenery. Unfortunately, you can really start to see the GoPro's image quality fall apart in darker shots like this one. The artifacts on the wooden boards are really distracting, even though the rest of the image looks alright. Does it take away from the overall shot though? Would you have noticed it if I didn't point it out?
I wonder.
Having a fixed aperture of 2.8 also makes the GoPro footage look flat compared to the Sony. The details on the leaves and trees don't compare at all. When the two cameras are capturing the same shot of this fountain in slow motion, the ZV-1 is head and shoulders above the Hero 7. The Sony footage has better contrast, we can see the water droplets shining in the sun, the colors of the flowers are more vibrant, and the detailing on the fountain is outstanding. Now, the Sony isn't perfect. Its 120 frames per second slow motion footage is fantastic, but the 240, 480, and 960 frames are less good. To record at those speeds, you need to be in high frame rate mode, which has a limited record time, between 1 and 3 seconds depending on the quality you choose. The 240 frames per second footage still looks decent, but the 480 and 960 shots aren't good enough quality to use in any professional video. Going back to the Sony's strengths, switching between manual and autofocus is a breeze. For this shot, I let the autofocus pick up the soap container, then toggle to manual focus using a custom key on the scroll wheel. Such a cool and easy shot is unfortunately impossible to shoot on a GoPro. Another great feature of the ZV-1 is the included 3-stop ND filter. It's not as flexible as being able to change out your own ND filters, but it's infinitely faster than screwing them on manually. So here's a little test on the ND filter. You can see it's super blown out now. Let's throw this bad boy on. Look at that. So much better. That said, the GoPro managed to handle exposure quite well in the bright sun without any ND filters. Now let's talk audio, starting with a quick test with both cameras outside with a bit of wind. We're going to do a little audio test. This is on the Sony and on the GoPro, and we're just talking here probably like 4 feet away or so. And the Sony does not have the dead cat on it yet, and it's a little bit windy out here. I wouldn't say it's anything too crazy, but it's certainly outside. This is same distance, same everything, and just talking with the dead cat installed on the Sony. That wasn't even close. Sony takes the round handily. The GoPro actually captures way more low end, at the expense of clarity. Even after EQing the GoPro audio to reduce the low frequencies and help the vocals cut through more, I still prefer the sound of the Sony's raw audio. For audio novices, the less work you need to do in post, the better. Let's see how they fare indoors. We've got 5 different mics to test here. The 2 onboard camera mics, an overhead condenser, a dynamic vocal mic, and this ancient lav mic that I got for free with some computer bundle 10 years ago. I'm going to record myself going on a few audio rants and switch between the different mics so you can hear how they sound. First up is the Sony. It's got a directional 3-capsule mic array that seems to pick up vocals quite well. It also features an 1/8" mic input on the side, as well as Sony's hot shoe mount. Moving on to the GoPro, its unique audio feature is its hands-free voice control. A nice feature to have for people who enjoy yelling at their electronics, but not something I'd personally use ever.
Why does it say pepper jam when there is no pepper jam? I swear to God, one of these days I just kick this piece of out the window.
You and me both, man. I think it's lucky I'm not armed.
You can use external audio sources with the Hero 7 Black, but you have to buy the 1/8" to USB-C adapter that costs $50 American. Ah, ouch, Charlie!
Charlie, that really hurt.
The main overhead mic I'm using is an AKG 451. It's a pencil condenser that's normally used to record drum overheads and acoustic instruments. Why not use a shotgun, you ask? 2 reasons. Number 1, I don't own one. And number 2, they don't sound amazing, especially the cheap ones.
Take that back! Never! Take it back! No!
The biggest selling point about shotgun mics is that they have an extremely tight polar pattern, which is great for reducing external noise and nasty room sounds. In order to accomplish this, however, they end up suffering from poor to average sound quality, especially for musical applications. The next mic is right in front of me on my Rode PSA-1 boom arm, which is another great piece of gear, by the way. This mic is the Shure KSM-8. It's a regular dynamic microphone, but it has 2 capsules instead of 1. By using 2 capsules, this mic has very little proximity effect. In case you don't know, proximity effect is the increase in low frequencies that happen when you get closer to a microphone with a directional polar pattern. This means that your voice will sound different depending on how far away you are from the mic. With the KSM-8, I can be a foot away, 3 feet away, or eating the microphone, and the tonality is very consistent. Doing this with an SM58 does not yield the same results. Check it out. This is how an SM58 sounds about a foot away. This is how it sounds when it's about 3 feet away. And this is how it sounds when you're right up on it. Last up is the lav mic here. Now, the same rule applies. Whether you're trying to sell real estate in the Upper East Side, when you're placing microphones for your next project, or just trying to find a good place to dump all those bodies, the most important factor is location, location, location.
Two treasure hunters made a ghastly discovery today when they stumbled on what appears to be an underwater graveyard in a crevice off the coast of Miami.
The closer you can get the mic to the person speaking, the cleaner your audio will be. Thankfully, most lavs are omnidirectional, which means we don't have to worry about proximity effect. Now, this lav is still pretty average sounding compared to our XLR mics, but it wipes the floor against our onboard camera mics, just because I can get it so much closer to my mouth. In summary, both camera mics work fine for on-the-go content and scratch audio. The Sony's mic array is certainly a step up over the GoPro, but neither of them can compete with proper external microphones. On the flip side, other YouTubers have complained about the Sony not having a headphone jack to monitor their audio. I get it, certainly a nice to have, and no one wants to see Apple win the war.
You were the chosen one! It was said that you would destroy this thing, not join them!
However, I suspect a lot of ZV-1 users are one-man band operations, so they wouldn't be able to monitor their own audio anyway. I also tested the latency of each camera's HDMI output. This is pretty critical for anyone considering using these cameras for video conferencing or streaming. For this test, I used the Elgato Camlink 4K for video capture and my Shure KSM8 running into an RME Babyface Pro for audio. Now, normally if you forget to turn off in-camera stabilization, your video signal will be delayed by an insane amount of time. We're talking a full second or two behind. I tested both cameras with stabilization on and off and found no difference at all. Your mileage may vary though, because many GoPro users have complained about having issues streaming when stabilization is on. Better to err on the side of caution and just turn it off. But if you forget, you might be okay.
Hold on to your butts.
Here are the results. At 1080p and 30 frames per second, the GoPro was around 6 frames behind audio. That's around 198 milliseconds for you audio folks. Whereas the Sony was about 2.6 frames, or 88 milliseconds behind. Now we're going to test latency between the two cameras. Right now we're testing with GoPro with no stabilization on. Okay, this is just a sanity check for this one as well. Mic's placed a little bit better now. Both of them sound pretty far off when compared to real-time audio coming from my KSM8, but the Sony had significantly less latency than the GoPro. You may say that it's not really fair to compare an action camera from 2 years ago to a brand new fully featured camera that was just released. But the Hero 7 is still being sold today at a third of the price of the ZV-1, so it's worth discussing if either camera is worth it in 2020.
Worth it!
For my money, they both fit the bill very well. The amount of features, coupled with fantastic image quality, puts the ZV-1 on top of the list for anyone looking to buy a budget/entry-level camera. As for the Hero 7 Black, it still delivers great video, with a few caveats to deal with. For less critical secondary shots, overhead cameras, crazy action shots, and dangerous or wet locations, you can't go wrong with the Hero 7 Black. Now, I can't finish off this video without mentioning my new favorite video tool, the Zhiyun Crane M2 Gimbal. Both of these cameras pair nicely with it. I had no problems balancing either camera, and the wireless functionality works almost flawlessly with them both. The M2 gives you full control over zoom, as well as being able to start and stop recordings. Of course, it also keeps your camera well balanced and lets you take amazingly smooth shots. It comes with a sturdy carrying case, and it's crazy lightweight. I can't recommend it enough for anyone looking to capture smooth cinematic content without breaking the bank. I ordered it from Amazon for $289 Canadian, and it even came with a super long and sturdy selfie stick. I'll leave a link in the description if you want to check it out. Whatever you do, don't buy the Sony Vlogger accessory pack. It costs $200 Canadian, it's too short and too small to overcome the focal length issue, and it doesn't give you nearly enough features to justify its high price. One last word, it's very easy for us tech nerds to get caught up in new gear. Just remember, the audience doesn't care what your ISO is set to, what f-stop you're on, or how many houses you'll have to rob to pay for your new lens. If your video is boring, people will click away. Since you're still watching this video, mission accomplished. That's all I've got for you on this one. Leave me a comment down below if there's something you want me to explore in a future video, or if you feel personally attacked by any of the jokes and need to let me know how wrong I am.
Let me ask you something. How hard is your job? How intelligent do you have to be?
Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.